Call this meeting of the Land Use and Planning Committee to order. This meeting's agenda has been properly notified by the clerk's office. Please rise with me as there are allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First, the consent agenda, if you review the minutes, any updates or anything that needs to be prepared on those. We'll consider that accepted. Again, the contract with Wolf Lab, the Wolf Living Trust, that's a pass-through item. So we won't be necessarily doing anything with that, it just passes through as part of the consent agenda. I would like to note there were a couple of items that had rather late supporting documents added, and we are aware of that. So steps are being taken to make sure we get those in a more timely manner, and hopefully it won't be that way. These are just going to be discussion items tonight, so won't be really acting on anything. But I do want to make sure that you have ample time to get through the documentation properly. So I apologize for that. We will move on to that. Okay, from there, we will start off. We're gonna have to flip the order a little bit. We'll make some accommodations for some people. So first, we're gonna start with the 2025 resolution general fund transfer Parks and Trails Fund to Brownsfield Assessment Fund. The first motion by Brian Krebs, seconded by Supervisor Bradmore. And discussion. Who's got this? Aaron Doppel. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see on the agenda itself, it was labeled general fund transfer. It's actually not a general fund transfer. It's coming from the Parks Development Fund, and it would go to the Brownfield Assessment Fund. So somehow the word general got in there. This is not coming from the general fund. The packet has a committee report and the resolution itself. But really, the nuts and bolts of this is the Parks Development Fund currently sits with a balance of almost $548,000. This resolution authorizes $400,000 of that to be shifted into the Brownfield Environmental Assessment Fund. And then the remaining balance would go to offset costs in the capital improvement plan. So essentially this would close out the Park Development Fund. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. I know this obviously turns into a policy discussion as well, so we've got folks that can comment on that, as well as some of our experts on the Brownfields program and that stuff as well.
Any questions? Discussion. Supervisor Krebs?
Thank you. In the committee report, it says that the Park Development Fund was for making investments in recreational trails. What trails were we intending on building that we would have to?
I can tell you that previous versions of the capital improvement plan had in some years even as much as $250,000 allocated to this fund. There was a plan that was developed at one point in time, and I think Jamie can probably comment more on the plan itself, but the CIP allocated funds to it, and they weren't used a lot.
Right, the funds were allocated to the, when the bikeway and trail network plan of the county was adopted, there was a concept that we would start moving some money to support grant matches or grant applications that would help implement that plan. That program never came to fruition. We have tried on a number of occasions to potentially use that money to allocate it towards trails. So this committee recently discussed an attempt to use this pot for matching money in the village of Richfield along 167 for a side path match. So because that was originally the intent was kind of that type of an implementation of high priority corridors coming from that plan. Because of the state laws, and the way, and that project is a good example. There was presented a number of substantial hurdles to get through, to get those types of projects off the ground and get implemented. I think at this point, the recommendation is that the brownfields program is of a high priority and makes use of those funds. So rather than allocate money from a different pot, it's kind of closing out what was previously designated for that program.
So that the program is being closed out or that due to lack of funding, or do we also need to take further action to close out that plan?
I don't think we will.
And then the balance of the money that would be shifted to the CIP for other projects, would that be other projects within the parks enterprise fund, or is that just countywide CIP projects?
It would be countywide CIP, offset the need for sales tax, just in general.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Supervisor Conrad.
Supervisor Conrad, over Zoom.
Thank you, Chair. Question regarding the transfer of funds. We have this, proposed Glacier Hills Park expansion. Can those funds be utilized, towards Glacier Hills or, some other, areas within our parks and trails that we have, current plans on or future plans envisioned for?
We certainly could, using the 147,000 remaining balance on that project would require us to basically, find that money, and put it into the CIP from another source as well. So if we use it on one thing, we gotta come up with it, for the other projects. So I guess, by putting it into the CIP, in theory, it would offset costs no matter what, right? I don't know if that makes.
And I'll just add that, yes, while we certainly could do that, we have multiple pots of money, the general fund and park development fund. What we're basically doing here is we're closing one fund, so that just means that if we need, let's just say we would have a really great trail project that the county should talk about, we might still have that conversation, we would just not be coming over to the other pot, right? So it's just taking, it's kind of closing all of the funds into one fund, if that makes sense in my mind. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't still have conversations if they were prudent or necessary related to parks and trails. If should we find ourselves in a position where we feel there would be a recommendation for additional needed funding, if that makes sense. So right now, this money's available and can easily fund brownfields and the capital improvement plan.
All right, appreciate it. And Brownsfields is one of our priorities.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Jamie, this wasn't part of that whole trail plan, was it? Where we were trying to connect a bunch of trails, I don't know, past like 3-4 years ago, was it?
It was, it was implementation money we were setting aside to try to have a pot of money available to implement that plan. That's exactly what it was. But that really never got off the ground because of how difficult it is to implement trails without eminent domain along some of these paths, and it's just challenging. And so I think we're throwing that implementation pot out with this transfer.
And if that being the case, because this was something that was done by the board, this plan does have to be undone by the board.
Yes, that's why this is a 2/3 vote of the county board.
Okay, so this in effect is the resolution to undo that plan.
It undoes the funding, the implementation, the funding that was set aside to potentially implement that plan.
Plan still exists.
Yeah, the plan still exists.
So then at a future date, we could turn around and put money back into the plan if we found a project.
Correct, and that was exactly what I was trying to articulate to Supervisor Conrad. That should we decide, you know, in 6 months that we wanna allocate $1 million for a trail implementation program, or a really great project comes up, we still might have that conversation, and we'd just be looking at Aaron differently in terms of the pot of money we'd be looking at. Why we have two pots is kind of confusing on the books. And so that's part of the reason why we're no longer going to segregate that money from the rest of the money.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, hearing none, and we will go ahead and vote on this plan. All approved, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, looks like you have your approval.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, we'll go to the 2025 resolution requesting review of the restrictive 3-year septic tank maintenance policy. Let me just first state that this is something that we do from time to time. We gripe at our state and tell them some of the things we like, some of the things we don't like, what we see in the future. It's not anything that's binding to them, but certainly our assemblymen and state senators will take into consideration some of the things we do, because a lot of the best ideas come from this. So this is just merely a talking point. It's something to kind of get a feel for what's going on out there in the general public. And something that I do know a little bit about. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Jamie.
Yes, thank you, Chair, for those remarks. I think they're spot on, and particularly the P square.
Hang on one second.
Do you want?
You need to do a motion on that.
Oh.
So I'm gonna go ahead and motion Supervisor Fryman and Supervisor Kress. Thank you. Discussion, go ahead.
Yes, awesome, thank you, and we do have some people in attendance today, and I'm gonna ask and we're gonna get this later in one of your reports, but I'm actually gonna ask our interim Assistant Natural Resources Director, Brett Scher. I know you probably haven't had a lot of experience with Brett. He joined Washington County about 10 months ago, as our lead land use inspector, and has a lot of it from Jefferson County, so he's not new to county government. And he has a lot of experience in floodplain zoning, sanitation and shoreline zoning, and so we've been really impressed, and it's with that sentiment that we had several constituents reach out to the county executive and to our offices around this law in particular, generally older couples maybe living alone, questioning the state intervention into their lives related to why they need to have their system pumped. And so that started a conversation around this topic, and it really is just intended to do that, to start the conversation. And we have a number of our local businesses here today who have helped, and I'm grateful. I wanted to say they're going to ultimately make this a better end product. So with that, I'm gonna let Brett kind of go through his presentation about this item, and then we'll open it up for discussion and kind of see how the committee wants to move forward.
Okay, Brett, floor is yours.
Thank you. That's good to meet all of you too. Great way to send it from.
Can you send the PowerPoint to the meetings? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, this kind of got brought up with some public input regarding the 3-year maintenance program. The 3-year maintenance program is set by state law, a state statute, which requires you to pump your system every 3 years, or when sludge and scum hits 1/3 volume in the tank. And I will go over that a little bit in future slides. The public, they're kind of questioning on if it was necessary, why it was necessary, where did this 3 years come from, and that's why this is being presented to you today. So this comes from, I got the Wisconsin State statute up there where this all comes from 145.205B. The maintenance program shall include a requirement of inspection and pumping of the private on-site waste treatment system at least once every 3 years if the private on-site waste water treatment plant does not have a maintenance plan that's prescribed by the rule by the department. In this case, the department would be DSPS. They're the state organization that can set the rules for this, and there's really no leeway. We have to follow those rules. How the county's involved in the whole POUTS maintenance program. We track maintenance, we send the maintenance reminders, and we follow up with the delinquent properties, if they're not pumping. Then the question kind of comes back to it is, when do you pump a system? State statute, as like I said before, requires 3-year pumping. Otherwise, if your tank is 1/3 full of scum and sludge, which in the diagram you can see it, scum's your top floating layer while the sludge is the bottom. If you get too much in there, your system doesn't work properly, and we'll get a little bit further into that through this discussion. There's another aspect that comes into this is the pumping versus visual inspection. So there are licenses out there that allow such as a POUTS maintainer or inspector like myself. A plumber can do this, pumpers. You can go out and visually inspect it, and if they deem the system is under 1/3 sludge and scum, you can sign off on it and it pushes it out another 3 years. There's also another exception, pushing up 5 years for seasonal residencies. That would be your, older couples living down in Florida. And they're only at the cabin during the summer, they don't use their system very often. We're allowed to push that out to 5 years. And then it comes down to the tank, the system itself and the tank sizing. Code it's designated by bedrooms, not the number of people or bathrooms, as a lot of people think it is. A bedroom counts as 2 people in the house. So if you have a 2-bedroom house, you could have up to 4 people in that house. How it's calculated for the tank sizing, which kind of comes into play with this, is use an estimated flow, which is 100 gallons per day, and then times that by 1.5, and that is your max flow. That number was established by the state. That should be the peak amount of water coming through. And then for the tank sizing, you would then times that by 2.088. There's a giant calculation that goes into that, and that's what determines how big your septic system tank is. So usually today, we're seeing around 1,200 gallons for an average home. But as you increase the number of bedrooms, you're increasing people, the tanks get bigger. An argument that has kind of came up with the public has been questioning why I have we'll say a 2-bedroom home. The kids moved out, only 2 people are using it. My system's oversized according to code, and that's why this got brought up, is we're not putting as much waste into our system. Why should I have to pump every 3 years? And this is kind of where this issue with the public came up. Just kind of a quick overview of the resolution in your packet. UW-Madison says the average person in Wisconsin uses 56 gallons of water a day. There is some little bit different view on it. Every single house is unique on how much water you're using, so it is tough to put an exact average on that. Another disconnect with the public is the number of people versus the number of bedrooms in a home. That kind of comes back to, you got a 3-bedroom house, 2 people living there, your system's way oversized per state code, why do I need to pump it? Another argument that has came up is new studies and technology that's been coming out in the field. There's new alarms coming out, new tanks, new products for the septic field coming out. A question to DSPS is why can't we keep up with times and technology? The code was originally put into place in 1979 with minimal updates to it. There were some in the early 2000s and mid 2000s that were put into play, but nothing detriment. And then another question that came up is how was this 3 years determined? 3 years, we kind of backtracked it to a budget bill, but there was no input on where the number actually came from the 70s. If there was a study done, if it was just put in place because it sounded good at the time, and it was kind of an urge for us to the state to look at this and say, hey, this should be brought back up. Why, how was this determined? The study needs to really be done on the usage of these systems to keep up with the times. So that was the quick gist of the resolution. If you guys looked at it, it's kind of urging the state to re-look at these points. And see if there's any updates that can be made and push the state a little bit to look at this code and not just sit on the back burner and let it ride. We did have, the last couple of days, we've had a lot of comments for this resolution, particularly from the pumping community with concerns on extending this or changing the pumping cycle date altogether. Some of the comments, I'll kind of keep it general for you. An email and then several calls today, which I took. Some of these big concerns was that, the pumpers are on the ground every day. They see the issues every day. People are abusing their systems. They don't know how a septic system truly works. A lot of these pumpers are educating the public while they're out there as part of their job. And they see it more often than any of us would, how people actually treat these systems and what's being put through these systems. A lot of these homeowners too, they're kind of testing our newer homeowners who were on a sanitary system, where they're just putting down anything down your drain. Septic system's a little bit different. If it goes out, you're gonna be out about $30,000 to $40,000 if you abuse your system. And not pumping it was a concern of theirs. It can lead up to buildup in pipes, it can lead up to biomatting, nitrogens in the soil, which could ultimately affect your groundwater, your well water. It all comes back to that. And from what the pumpers have seen, they don't think homeowners are responsible enough to extend this date or to allow an extension of this date from the systems they've been seeing here in Washington County. Some suggestions that they've seen that kind of back this up is plug filters have been common. Homeowners aren't even cleaning out their filters. You're supposed to do it twice a year. And they get the calls that say, hey, I gotta come here and clean up plug filter. Why is my system not working? There's a lot of small issues like that that are coming up. And then it comes back to the waste itself. If you allow a pumping, we'll say 5 years, 6 years, you're gonna have more sludge in your tank. It can create a mat on the bottom, making it difficult to pump. But one of the hardest parts is this has to be treated by waste treatment plants. And sometimes this waste is very high level in BODs, fats, and a treatment plant won't take that, or they got taken small increments. So getting rid of the waste is another giant concern from the pumping community. They did have some suggestions too, with the resolution we submitted, some wordage changing. And then there was a lot of talk about the Pounce container license and issues with that. It's a little off topic of this resolution, but that Pounce maintainer license allows a person with the maintainer credentials to go out there, inspect the system, and they're reporting that license holders of this maintainer aren't reported properly and systems are failing because of this. And this was a huge concern they brought to me the last day or two, that this should really be looked at. How can we kind of hold these maintainers accountable? Are these systems truly able to be signed off on? Because they're coming out in the 6-year period after it gets pushed out and they're unable to pump these. And it's letting systems fail ultimately. And the other concern is once you have a failed system is the dollar amount on it. And a lot of these lots in Washington County, there's not enough space for another system. So once you lose your first system, you're kind of put on a holding tank. And then you're gonna have that cost of like every month you gotta pump it, or every 2 weeks. That is the gist of the resolution and kind of concerns we've had. If you got any questions on it, feel free to ask away. There's a couple routes you can kind of go on this. If you don't think it's valid, you can have it shut down here. Or you can have it go out to maybe an expert group or an expert work group to get more input on the resolution, such as the plumbing community, the pumpers, maintainers, homeowners, everybody who's involved with this to get more input. There's a few options for it, or you can postpone it too if you would like more information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jamie.
Yes. I just would like to comment on the work group option, which is work. And also, unless there is a clear goal of the work group, it may or may not produce an end product that, again, right now, we can't actually change it, but you know, in the conversation that I had with one of our plumbers in our community, there was a lot of interest in Washington County actually working with our pumpers and our plumbers to develop more of a pilot program where there would be less government intervention. and actually what that might look like and what we would do here differently if we were to do something, and interest in those plumbers to be a part of that conversation. However, before we would embark on something like that, I do think it's important that the policy level conversation around this is voted on by the committee, the county board, and the county executive, which is why there's sort of a resolution in front of you. Right, so I would be encouraging you to really look at that language. And take the time you need to feel comfortable with what it is you want to say. And then making sure we have a majority that agrees with the general direction, right? Because if we don't have the vote, then we don't wanna spend a lot of staff, we don't wanna spend a lot of time, we don't actually have ample resources right now to be convening and having conversations if there isn't political support from the board. So that's kind of why we started with a resolution conversation. So I just am adding that of, using that of that conversation.
All right, so discussion from the committee.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, of course.
With the bedroom and the people, because we're in a 4-bedroom place, but only 2 people, so doesn't that make a difference?
It could in your daily wastewater flow, but it comes down homes to an individual level. Some people use less water, some people use more water. If you're going strictly by state code, you would still have to pump under the 3 years, or you have an inspection possibly done, but then it would push out another 3 years. Most likely, if you're living there full time, your tank will fill up past that 1/3 sliding scale. But yeah, no, that's a question that we have for the state would be these systems where they're oversized for who's currently living there. That's a valid question. I think another point is there's a lot of home switching around here, so we see it often where it'll be let's say an older couple living there, their kids are gone, they move, downsize, and then a family of 6 moves in, and then the system blows out and they're stuck replacing their system. So there's that option of it too, which it really comes down to an individual level of how the water's being used, but.
And I'm just adding, you have a lot of assets as a homeowner and a personal property, in your personal property, a furnace, an HVAC, right? The government doesn't necessarily mandate that I have my system checked every year, but I do, right? I belong to a service where I still have it serviced, and so part of this gets into, you don't have the flexibility to look at your system and say, you're right, you actually make more sense every 6 years. And if you ask certain people of the state, there are studies that are showing the opposite. And so the resolution encourages, a conversation about that topic.
And I just want to add that there really hasn't been any studies really done with this sludge in a tank that I'm aware of. So it's kind of urging the state maybe to take some action and relook at some of these codes. It may be reducing the cycle, maybe increasing it, but it's hard to say until you have a study really done. And I think part of the urge would be having the state relook at this language. And there's multiple parts of the language that really should be relooked at and updated to more current time.
Any further discussion?
Supervisor Conrad.
Supervisor Conrad on Zoom.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, and I appreciate to the voice of the people doing this work, really the front line, the pumpers, as you stated. Because as a nurse, it's always important to get the voice of the frontline nurses in for any, change, and they obviously have some subject matter expertise, you could say. But, and to, speaking to the evidence, it does concern me that, this is based off really no evidence, no data, but I wouldn't, want to make a change and support anything without, good evidence and data and the voice of the people. But thus moving this forward and agreeing to yes would help encourage the state to, get correct counsel and things. And advisors on how to change the statute. That's correct?
Correct, yes. I think it's really important to, take in part of the people in the field also. There's lack of data right now, but the field staff, the pumpers, they're very, they're a good community and, they have a lot to say and a lot of knowledge on it. So I think it's important to take them into consideration on this decision and maybe reworking this resolution or maybe getting some more input from them on this.
Yeah, definitely. I could see some future public hearings at the state capitol with them sharing their voice and stuff. Right. Thank you.
For discussion? Supervisor Krebs?
Thank you. Yeah, I can see both sides of the equation here. You know, on one end, it's personal property rights, let people do what they want with their property. But on the other side, there is public health safety to it, especially with the groundwater stuff. The people that are knowledgeable about it, that are informed of their systems. Absolutely, there should be some flexibility for them to maintain their system as they would see fit and are able to. What they now operate the way they need to, but at the same time, there's so many people, they don't even know they have a septic system until the postcard comes and they don't even know where it is and they don't know anything about it. And they treat their garbage disposal as a garbage can. So I think there's definitely room for discussion. I think it might be a little premature to pass a resolution and send to the state. I think maybe if we have a little time, we could hear from the local community and other players in this. To make sure we get a resolution sent to the state that's worded right. I would like it to be starting the open dialogue, not so much just a repeal of an existing policy and stuff like that. Cause like just looking through this resolution, line 32 talks about a deregulation of the program, and I don't know if it's a deregulation apparatus, but maybe a re-examining and updating of it to modern practices. And or the technologies we have, even for people to waive it. Something like that, or a homeowner wants to waive it, but them acknowledging what the costs and negatives of doing so and stuff, so at least they've been forewarned about it. So I think I would say, I don't know if tabling it's the right motion at this time, but I definitely think there's more of a discussion that we had on it before I would feel we should vote on it. So that's a motion to table or whatever the correct language is to defer for at least another meeting.
It would be actually to postpone.
Okay.
With a time frame. And I will accept the motion.
Sure, and also, you know, one other one doesn't, so I will wait with that motion.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the courtesy. Keeping in mind that this is a document that basically advises our state. We're not actually telling them what they need to change or how they need to change it or the timeframes that they need to do, but merely to look at this particular item and perhaps put some of their DNR people on it, or whatever governing bodies that they use, the scientific community, and take a look at it. We're not asking for the program to be canceled. We're not asking for, any specific changes, but what I see of this resolution, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is merely an advisory resolution to reconsider and look at without any direct.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. So I believe, and we have several people here today, and thank you for showing up. I appreciate any time people come to my meetings and they're actively involved. At the state level is where you would have the proper input to the right people. The people who actually make these decisions. So I would invite you to reach out to the legislators and the DNR and whoever you guys are all registered under and say, hey, you know, Washington County, right, we maybe need to look at it, or maybe you're against it, you know, no, we don't want you looking at nothing, either way, whatever your side it is that you're on, I invite you to reach out to the state and make your feelings and your ideas known, because I think it's the professionals that can guide us to a more reasonable, plan, because currently myself, I don't believe, that the way they're doing it is reasonable, because my mother and my sister, two little old ladies, you know, living in a giant 5-bedroom house that had a massive system, you know, I mean, ridiculous to pump it out. They pumped out nothing, you know, it was, so it didn't make sense, but they were incurring these costs. I don't believe the state is usually very good at fixing anything, certainly not the legislature. Okay, usually they're full of pointing out. Okay, so, having said that, though, they do have the professionals that, you know, at the DNR and people who study land use and conservation and those types of things, and I'd be willing to listen to them. But I don't know that we should necessarily postpone this is my opinion, because I do believe that we're not asking for anything specifically to be done, but merely recommending that they open up and take a look at this. So that's my concerns for it then. We are not taking any public comments, sir. Thank you. So, but if you'd still like to make the motion, of course. We'll let Chairman Schley also chime in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our governor in Madison, whether you like him or not, has made a big push for water quality. So I think a resolution advisory going up to say, change this without data to back it up. And I know there's a lot of expertise here, but as Supervisor Krebs said, there are homeowners that take good care of their systems, and there are homeowners that you darn well better have them forced to do something every 3 years, or their systems are gonna fail. And so I can go either way on this. Maybe it's good to postpone it a little while and get some more input. So we've got data to back it up when you send a resolution. Because advisory resolutions might not go far in Madison in the present climate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So having that said, would you like to motion?
I would like to postpone this resolution until the next scheduled plan use.
And we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Supervisor Conrath, second.
We already, thank you, Supervisor Conrad, Mr. Supervisor Mary beat you to it.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a first, we have a second, any discussion on the motion?
Yes, Supervisor Conrath?
One moment, Supervisor Conrad, Supervisor Mary chimed in first. Supervisor Mary.
One question I asked, if we're gonna postpone it, what are we gonna have back? What new information are we gonna be seeking to make for the next discussion? What information are we asking? We're gonna have it put it off for a month. What's gonna happen between now and then that we'll have a new point of discussion at the May meeting? And I don't know the answer to them.
I would,
My intention by the next meeting is I would be looking for any input, to be received from the general public towards myself at least, or any other members of this committee. And then from there, I would, there personally is some language in this resolution as it says that I'm not comfortable with. I'd say minor tweaks or changes of words and stuff, but I would take this resolution. How I would prefer to see it presented to the state. I'm not saying, I don't think there's gonna be any more hard data like that. I don't think that's even our Tony's job to produce that. This is, I think the resolution should be formatted and changed slightly. Or change in a way where it encourages the state stronger to look more into the overall design or just reassess the system like it's a new system, you know, like it's a whole new program that, because right now we have no idea how we got here, so they're smart enough that everything else with the new system and the DNR and all that, they should have a lot more data on it like this to be able to tell us why we're doing things the way they are. So we're encouraging them to really understand what they're asking of us and why, so.
So you work with the staff to develop that wording?
I got-
I didn't know what.
I got a red pen here, I'll mark it up and return it back to the staff, so they can be in the next agenda.
I just want to make sure if we're gonna postpone it, what are we postponing it to?
No, my intention would be is I'll give you a Brian Krebs version of the resolution for you.
Correct.
And, okay, so we kind of get to an area where, I'll be honest, I'm not sure what, would be the correct property. But if Ms. Lundy would care to chime in.
Yes, so I would advise that if you have amendments to the resolution, whether it's just Supervisor Krebs submitting them or multiple board members who want to provide their comments, that those go through your staff person as it relates to your comments on the resolution. And then we can work collaboratively with, your office to kind of prepare, you know, kind of the options or what the feedback that's been received for your next meeting. And we can also share and we did take names, we can share, any additional feedback that we received. Specifically with all of you, several weeks prior or whatever, we feel like we have good feedback so that you have that in your comments.
And then I would suggest also, perhaps that the, people that are here present today have the opportunity to maybe send an email in, expressing their point of view, so that you may receive it, Supervisor Krebs, and the rest of the committee, so that you can maybe take a look as a whole, if that might influence how you might redraft this resolution.
It might also help to know why 3 years was picked in the first place. Maybe there was good data to support that.
Or maybe they threw some pumping against the wall and.
Right.
We're stuck. So, I'm trying my best, I'm a truck driver, so. Supervisor.
Go back to Supervisor Congress. You have a
Oh,
question?
yes, Supervisor Conrad.
Oh, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Supervisor Carol Mary. Yes, I also agree with Supervisor Krebs about really that verbiage of deregulation. Even, you know, our discussions here really aren't about, oh, you know, we need to deregulate. It's like, we need to really put something forward that is more towards, you know, the evidence and what's really the right thing to do. And so that language does concern me, and I would, yeah, as written too, I would not approve this at the time without adjusting some language in there.
Thank you for that. And again, I would, caution and state that we all have our evidence of what we believe might be the right thing to do, but we are also novices. We don't know how to do this, and we don't know the environmental impacts that pumping or not pumping or all the rest of that. So I would not make any suggestion from this committee that we would move on a resolution that would offer up that type of thing necessarily. I would probably want the state, you know, we could certainly say we'd like to know the environmental impact of, you know, an overflowing system or something like that, you know, or why we take 3 years, those types of things. Certainly I would have, you know, no problem with that. But I wouldn't want to offer any type of guidance to the state and the professionals. You know, I would probably leave the letters that we get from our pumpers, you know, you're free to guide them. That's your job. That's what you're supposed to do as an American. you know, put your input into your local government and into your state government. So I wouldn't try as a committee member here to guide the state like that. But certainly you are the expert, so I think your voice will be relatively pertinent to this discussion. So.
Yeah. Yes, Chair, thank you for those comments, and that's exactly why I'm uncomfortable with those words of deregulation, because it makes us think that we have some knowledge that what's current state is not appropriate, and that things should be deregulated, where we're really not in the position to make that decision.
Just want to make the statement that I would like the community, the homeowners, state, you know, voice on this matter too, though. The people that own the homes, the septic system. I mean, I just feel like they should have a right to, because we've been questioning this for the last few years, why this is even being done.
Well, I think certainly we are taking the role of the homeowners in this particular case. I mean, we are looking out for the interests of them and suggesting that this may or may not be the right way to go because it doesn't appear that.
Well, that's why I like what this states on here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the comments and,
Right.
you know, that I believe that that's what we are basically here. We represent. I mean, we represent all of our constituents, both professionals and homeowners. But it would appear to me that this resolution is drafted specifically for that, you know, it seems that it's not something that the homeowner is necessarily in their best interest. And although we make a concession that we don't know, because none of this really appears to be, you know, there's no reasoning behind it. Or at least not any that's apparent. So, and another look at it, I think would make sense. So anyway, we have a motion on the table, we have a second on the table, and now discussion.
Any the motion?
The motion is to postpone next month. The resolution to allow for time for a little bit more input on the resolution itself. And hopefully get some amendments. And feel free to strike some things or look at what you think works and what doesn't. And then at that point, we'll look at it again and hopefully.
Just want to make sure we know who we're voting.
Yes, so
Postpone.
as to the motion to postpone, seeing no further discussion, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All right, so, any opposed? Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so that is the motion, and I think that pretty much leaves it to next month, and, there it is. We're all in the resolution mood. Let's, I'm gonna continue, somewhat out of order, and I apologize to, Kayla for that. But, it seems to make sense, we take a look at 2025 resolution confirming providing municipal planning services to the town of Madison as part of the shared revenue of the county sales tax. And this is something that we've been doing, we've done a few times before. So I'll need a first and a second. Motion by Supervisor Krebs. Need a second? Second by Supervisor Pridemore. And we will be speaking on this. All right. Yes.
Good afternoon. Yeah, so we're looking with the town of Madison. I'm sorry?
We are on the wrong thing. I move to item E, which is resolution confirming providing municipal funding services to the town of Madison.
Yes.
Okay, they got the multi-jurisdictional comprehensive on there. That's what I was getting.
Do you need the screen? You can.
Okay. Don't want to confuse anything.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, so we are, working with the town of Addison on some shared, planning services. It will include a minor update to the comprehensive plan, and also develop a, SCORP, which is the, outdoor recreation plan, and very similar to our county park and open space plan for the town. And then also work on a master plan, for a park, and a trail connection to some general property. We're gonna get started on that, hopefully in the next couple of months.
All right, any discussion? Supervisor Krebs?
Well, could you explain or verify, I guess? They currently the planner that they have, where they're zoning administrator, whatever their titles are.
Again, I'm sorry, can't hear you.
I'm sorry, their zoning administrator at the top, I'm using County Addison just for this particular one. The county's not gonna replace that.
Oh, gosh, sure. The shared services planner is not, has anything to do with enforcement at all. It's really planning services to help out municipalities, that don't have full-time planners, so, doing long-term planning, comprehensive planning updates, working on our open space planning, if there's a sewer service area that, we can assist sewer pack on. There could be amendments to their zoning code, and we would help with going through that planning process of updating the zoning code, but it is not enforcement.
Okay, so that's what I thought, but I want to make sure that this isn't like from the general public's point of view, it's not gonna be the county. County is not gonna be the face of the town of Addison and that those situations. This is behind the scenes type stuff. Perhaps. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, I will bring to a vote, please, by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it. Moving on. You were handling the multi-jurisdictional comprehensive planning overview then?
Yes,
so to speak? Okay, then we'll go ahead and, thank you very much.
Great. So we have been, the Community Development Department has been working on the update to the farmland preservation plan. And we're in the process of updating the plan that was adopted 10 years ago. It has to be updated every 10 years. The farmland preservation plan has to be consistent with the county multi-jurisdictional comprehensive plan, and it has to be incorporated into the comprehensive plan by an amendment. So I thought it would be beneficial for this committee to have just a general overview of comprehensive planning and how it ties to the farmland preservation plan before Adam comes up and does a presentation of the farmland preservation plan itself. And I wanted to point out too, at the next meeting of this committee in May, you'll hold a public hearing for the farmland preservation plan. And also consider a resolution and an ordinance. Typically, I would have been providing that information, these presentations at the public hearing. So I'm actually the culprit in the delay and the change of the agenda, because I didn't want this committee to have only a week or so to review the document, to have a presentation on this information. I wanted to provide a full month for this committee to get this information, so you can consider it. You have a whole month now to review the farmland preservation plan that has been provided to you. So I apologize for any miscommunication, but the intent was good, to provide you with more time to review this before next month's public hearing. All right, so let's jump into comprehensive planning. The requirements are outlined in, state statute, 66-100-66-1001. The comprehensive plan is really a guiding document that helps guide all the planning efforts, in the counties, such as the Park and Open Space Plan, Land and Water Resources Management Plan, and our Farmland Preservation Plan. State statute requires that zoning, subdivision, and official mapping ordinances be consistent with comprehensive plans. Meaning that it furthers and does not contradict, plan goals, objectives, policies, and programs. And then another key factor of the comprehensive plan is our future land use map, which provides a visual presentation of the future land use designation for the county. One key thing to remember is that zoning ordinances, subdivision, like our county land division ordinance, our shoreline wetland floodplain ordinances, they need to be consistent with the county comprehensive plan. Our local governments, their zoning has to be consistent with their comprehensive plan. So local government comprehensive plans do not have to be consistent with the county comprehensive plan. That's a key aspect of comprehensive planning. There are 9 required elements of the plan. They're listed here: issues, opportunities, housing, transportation, utilities, community facilities, agricultural, natural resources, economic development, intergovernmental cooperation, land use, and then the implementation. And every single one of these elements in our plan have recommendations, and it's the goals, objectives, policies, and programs. The comprehensive plan was updated. It was adopted in April of 2019 by the county board. It aligns with the county strategic priorities that were established in 2016. It focuses on the county authority. So the comprehensive plan has shifted the focus from each one of those elements, and we shifted it to the actual authority and obligations that the county has, and it's outlined by department and division. And then we also looked at each one of those programs and determined, is this something that we are currently doing and ongoing, or is this a 5-year goal or a 10-year goal, a long-term goal? And any new policies and programs actually have to go through the county board budget process before they get approved. It's just because the county board approves the comprehensive plan does not mean that every single one of those new programs are automatically approved. So this is an example from the highway department, policies and programs, and as you can see, I know it's a kind of small print there, it's hard to see, but the yellow shows every single one of those 7 of the main 9 comprehensive planning elements and how that program relates to each one of those elements. The area in the orange is the timing as far as the goal. Is this a current program that we're working on, or is it a 5-year or a long-term goal? And then the area in the green focuses in on those county strategic goals. So every single program that's in the comprehensive plan is related to each one of those categories, and it's all based again on that department or division. So it really kind of hones in on the real authority that the county has. The different sections of the recommendation cover again the departments. Since this was created and adopted in 2019, we've had some shifting, highway, transit, land and water conservation, land use planning, and I should say community development as well, parks and trail. We have a joint health department, emergency management, sheriff's office, and economic development I wanted to talk about as well, because it's not just those programs that we partner with the EDWC on, but any economic development related program that the county has. So a good example of that would be our Heart Homestead program or our Next Generation Housing Program. We also have recommendations for local governments as well as our partnering organizations. And these are just a list of recommendations that we are providing to the local governments, and if they are interested in pursuing, that the county is supporting those recommendations. I want to focus now on the future land use plan map. This is really a guide for not only where we want urban development, but also preserving agricultural and natural resources. The future land use plan for Washington County is actually a patchwork of local government plans. By state statute, Washington County could have created our own land use plan for the unincorporated areas, actually all the areas outside of municipal boundaries in Washington County, but that actually would have provided and created more conflicts. And so when we adopted the comprehensive plan, the county board had passed a resolution saying that to reduce potential future conflicts, the county will incorporate the future land use plan of the cities and villages automatically within the municipal boundaries, but we will also incorporate the land use plans for each one of the towns. So the county land use plan map is a patchwork of all of our local government plans put together. So there are three main ways that the comprehensive plan would need to be amended. The first one, and the one that this committee would probably see the most of, are land divisions. So comprehensive plan amendments, they have to take place prior to the actual land division request. Because the ordinances have to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, not the other way around. So when a land division comes forward, let's say it is a land division that's happening at the town level. And so the town will look at the future land use plan. And if that subdivision plat does not align with the town's future land use for that area, then the town would have to go through and amend their comprehensive plan. And since the county's plan is a patchwork of that local government plan, then we would also consider an amendment to the county plan, a map amendment to that future land use plan. And then we would consider the land division request. So it's a whole series of timed events that have to happen in a certain order, because it all goes back to the ordinances needing to be consistent with the plan. Another example of an amendment would be a text change. So if there's a change to the goals or objectives or some of the programs in the county, then that would prompt an amendment to the plan. And then the last amendment would be caused by what we are actually working on right now, which is the update to the farmland preservation plan, and the need for that plan to be not only consistent with the comp plan, but also incorporated in the comp plan as an amendment. So the farmland preservation plan will be an amendment to the comprehensive plan itself. And then we go through all the requirements to amend the comprehensive plan. So the process, and there's a process that follows state statute. And the county has adopted a public participation plan, which is also a requirement for all of our amendments. It requires a class 1 30-day public hearing notice. So that public hearing notice for the public hearing that this committee is having next month was already published earlier this week to abide by that requirement. And then we've also provided the amendment, and the public hearing notice has to be sent to the clerk of every local government within and adjoining the county, the Department of Administration, sewer PAC, the library serving Washington County, so then the public has an opportunity to review the farmland preservation plan, and all non-metallic mining operators. And we actually sent it out to some additional individuals as well, like some of the on-staff planners throughout Washington County, so they had an opportunity to see it as well. Then after the public hearing is before this committee, Then this committee will consider a resolution and ordinance. And what is unique about the comprehensive plan is the fact that it is not just approved by resolution, but it has to be approved by ordinance as well, with the resolution being approved first and then the ordinance. Again, it's an accurate timing that has to happen in specific order. So then this committee would consider the amendment resolution and then the ordinance, then they would go to county board for final consideration. And then we would make the appropriate changes in that comprehensive plan. So as I mentioned earlier, our current comprehensive plan was updated a couple years ago, was adopted April 2019. We are actually in the process of doing a 5-year update to the county board, which is one of the recommendations in the comp plan. So we work with all the departments and divisions that were outlined on the previous slide. We asked those department heads to look at every single one of the policies and programs that were recommended in the comp plan. And to update those. Are they still current? Have they been working on them? Is it a program or policy that needs to change based on action of the committee or the county board? Are there new programs that they have been working on that need to be incorporated into the comp plan? So these changes will likely be before this committee in the next couple of months. And then it will go forward to the county board for consideration. So that is a very quick and general overview of comprehensive planning. And I hope I have set the stage for you to kind of understand why the federal conservation plan needs to be incorporated as an amendment to the comp plan and how those two plans connect. So do you have any questions?
Okay, does the committee have any questions for Ms. Silsby? Supervisor Krebs?
So for next month's public hearing, is that only farmland preservation or are there other amendments that are going to be incorporated in the?
The amendment to the comprehensive plan will only be farmland preservation.
Okay. I'm trying to zero in what our scope is for the thing. Other question, it said in there that we do a 5-year look, or I think it was 5-year recommendations for updates. Are we doing any, or is there any plan to do any other amendments to the plan? So for whether terminology or substantial, or are we going to wait more towards the end of this decade, 29, and just do a 10-year cycle?
Yeah, we do the major update every 10 years. It is quite an undertaking, and doing an update to the comprehensive plan is usually about a 1.5 to 2-year process. So the 5-year update is really just looking at, you know, the policies and the programs and updating where we need to update. We incorporate some of the changes that have been made through action of different committees throughout the county and the county board. But we will wait closer to probably, probably 2020, the end of 2027, I think. We'll start taking a look at a full update to the comprehensive plan.
One other question, the patchwork of local plans, how it's incorporated into a larger plan for future land use. When local municipality makes a change to that, is that automatic that you update the county map at that point, or?
Yeah.
I don't
That's actually a very good question.
Voting on updating just like the map, and I know there's constant changes to the local maps.
That's a very good question. And we only will update the county plan when there's additional action that needs to be taken, like a land division. So we can't act on that land division until the comprehensive plan accurately reflects the eligibility of that as a land use category on a map. Now, a town can go ahead and they can do numerous changes to their comprehensive plan without it going to the county for us to change the plan. So those amendments kind of stack up. But it's really the key is when a request is prompted by the implementation of an ordinance that the county needs to enforce that is, needs to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, like land division is a very good example.
Land divisions occur all the time though, so.
Correct, but
What-
they don't always prompt a comprehensive plan amendment. Yes.
Any more questions from the committee? Okay, just, maybe Kaylee might have an answer for this, if we get done with this meeting tonight, does all this background information disappear on the site?
It will be available online.
So I want to make sure that the committee has, I mean, you set it up so we have a month to look at it, but if it's hard to access or whatever, would it be prudent maybe to have that emailed to each of us?
So I just wanted to point out, this document is extremely big. And it can go through the email.
Oh, okay.
It is hard to zip it down.
Okay,
My suggestion is that we could provide each of you a hard copy of this, so then you have it, and we could get that printed out and mailed to you next week. So. If you
don't want to
would like.
necessarily take the expense if we don't need to, but we can access it.
Is it not available in a PDF format that we can look at?
It's in the.
It is.
So we'll be in the, okay, all
All
right, I just wanted to make sure that we had it available in some place so that we can get it. to look at it.
I think you're wasting a lot of money
Yeah,
printing
yeah, I don't
and
want to.
mailing. I mean, it's available PDF. You can download certain sections or pages you want to study and so on.
You put it
Yeah.
on flash drive.
No, that's, that would be the way I would go, I would want to take more than two. Okay, anything else on that?
No, that's,
All right, thank you very much.
thank you.
And we will move on to the farmland preservation plan overview.
Good to go? Right, I don't know if we need to make any motions or anything, but,
No, this is just a discussion item.
Perfect.
So go ahead.
Also, I want to recognize that Supervisor Conrad and Supervisor Marriott were both on the Farmland Preservation Advisory Committee. They put a lot of work towards this plan as well, so, just I wanted to acknowledge that right away. And before I start, the plan is also available on the county website. I can send a link to where it can, like, each individual chapter can be clicked on. In addition to if that helps,
I
but
would think that would be probably helpful, just, I mean, on the committee.
right,
Yeah, so go ahead and look at that, just so we have an easy way to access that information. I mean, obviously, it's a 216-page document, and I don't anticipate you're gonna go through it word for word tonight.
no,
But we will, wanna review it all. And at least a relatively good idea.
so, okay, let's start the presentation. So I'm gonna present on the County Farmland Preservation Plan. But before we start, I'm gonna go through a brief overview of the State Farmland Preservation Program as a good foundation. So, number one, state statute, chapter 91 is really the guiding statute for the State Farmland Preservation Program. It outlines everything that needs to be within farmland preservation plans. It outlines how the actual State Farmland Preservation Program is implemented through zoning and agricultural enterprise areas, how people even qualify for the tax credits that are attached to these, and a lot of more information on that, the specifics on the program. In addition, as Deb had mentioned, the Farmland Preservation Plan, every single county has to update their Farmland Preservation Plan every 10 years. So that's the purpose of, why we're going through this update right now. In addition, just to clarify our role in the State Farmland Preservation Program, we develop and update the Farmland Preservation Plan, but then implementation takes place at the town and the local level. And I'll cover that implementation and provide more information on that in further slides. But overall, the State Farmland Preservation Program, the intention is to incentivize the preservation of farmland through tax credits. So people who keep their farmland, who are within these programs or this program. That keep their farmland within farming use, qualify for a tax credit in the end. Okay, so how or ways that landowners can qualify for these tax credits? There's two methods. So there's the farmland preservation zoning ordinances, which they have to go through and conform to the state statute, chapter 91. There's all the requirements in there on what's permitted and what's conditional uses within these zoning ordinances. And then they have to be certified through DADCAP. So they will get reviewed by DADCAP and certified to make sure that they conform to these.
Explain that, Cap.
Oh, sorry, the Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection is the entity that runs the state farmland preservation program. I'll try to reduce the amount of acronyms as best as I can. Then in addition, for these farmland preservation zoning ordinances, there's kind of two paths that towns can choose to take on these. Either they can choose to allow some non-farm residents to be allowed in these parcels, or they can go the route of, if they're within the farmland preservation zoning district, therefore, it should only be meant for agricultural uses. So that could be the farm, could be the farmer's house, but mostly it's going to be the actual agricultural uses and no new non-farm residences. The second method is agricultural enterprise areas with farmland preservation. So this method is basically at least 5 landowners need to petition the state to create agricultural enterprise areas. And these petitioners would put together a group of parcels and put together a map that shows what the agricultural enterprise area. It's a conglomeration or grouping of parcels that they want to designate as agricultural enterprise areas. Through this petition process, they have to go through a lot of public participation, make sure landowners that are within these boundaries know that they're within these boundaries, have opportunity to see these areas, and then actually, say, hey, I want to be added. I have 50 parcels or 50 acres over here. That would be great. Or no, I don't want anything with this, so you should remove me from the map. And then it does have to go to the local governments. They have to do some type of review on these petitions. But then let's assume they go through the petition process, it gets approved with the Department or DADCAP. And now the agricultural enterprise area has been established. Landowners within these areas can choose to sign farmland preservation agreements with the state, specifically DADCAP, to preserve their farmland for a minimum of 10 years. So anybody within these boundaries, they can choose whether or not they want to be on these or to sign that farmland preservation agreement. So just because you're within the boundary does not mean that your land is prevented from being developed in any way. It's only when you sign that agreement with the state that you are kind of pointing up and saying, I'm committing to 10 years that I'm gonna keep this in agricultural use. So that's the farmland preservation agreements. Let me make sure I got everything. Oh, and so one last important piece for kind of connecting this, how the farmland preservation plan connects to the implementation of this program is the farmland preservation zoning ordinances and the agricultural enterprise areas. They need to conform to the farmland preservation areas that are within the county farmland preservation plan. I'll cover what the farmland preservation plan areas are later, but just know that that's kind of our role, is kind of designating these farmland preservation areas so the implementation piece can take place. So tax credits. So what do we get for being within these areas? So there's kind of two amounts, $10 per acre. If you're either within farmland preservation zoning districts, or if you're within the agricultural enterprise area with a signed farmland preservation agreement, you qualify for $10 per acre. If you're within both programs, you qualify for $12.50 per acre tax credit. So, yeah. So one additional piece that's really important. So since we last, when we created this plan, And since then until now, no towns have actually gone through and implemented this program. Meaning that no towns have actually incorporated these farmland preservation areas into their future land use map. So, as of right now, there aren't any farmland preservation zoning ordinances in Washington County, nor are there agricultural enterprise areas, so. All right. Now we're gonna start moving into the actual farmland preservation plan. So within chapter 91, there's several requirements that, requirements for information that needs to be within these plans. The first and foremost, obviously, has to provide a really good overview of the actual agricultural resources in the county. It has to produce, or it has to discuss and provide information on the impacts of these agricultural resources, and then the trends in those impacts. So impacts are things like population growth, housing, economic development, anything that might be positive or negative towards kind of agricultural resources. Letter B is it has to establish these farmland preservation areas, as I mentioned. With just again, once we go through the delineation process that we went through, will be easier. But know that one of the main things for these farmland preservation areas, in order for land to be included in these areas, they can't be planned for development in the next 15 years. So during our delineation process, we really screen for parcels that are planned for residential, commercial, and things like that. So letter C, the county has to provide actions that they will take to preserve farmland. Letter D is then the goals for promoting agricultural development and housing density. Housing being an important thing with agricultural resources is just one thing that's required within the state statutes. And lastly, as Devin mentioned, there needs to be a consistency between the county comprehensive plan and farmland preservation plan. Okay, plan chapter. So chapter 1, introduction, really just goes through an overview of the state farmland preservation program and the planning process we went through. Chapter 2 goes through trends, needs, and plans. So this is really trends as in things that impact agriculture. Like I said, population growth, housing development, economic growth, and then even other things like community facilities and services that are associated with agricultural resources. Chapter 3 goes through all the existing goals, objectives, policies, and programs that are within county plans that are connected to agricultural resources. So it's a big inventory of all of our plan, or all of our goals and everything for that. Chapter 4 goes through an extensive inventory of our agricultural resources in Washington County. It's fairly interesting, I'll say, but it goes through market analysis, our livestock inventories, and a lot of different pieces for Washington County. But then it also goes into the trends we're seeing in agriculture. So the new things that farmers are doing every day, like using drones to plant cover crops or use pesticides on their crops, or even just using automatic dairy parlors, which was fairly interesting as well. So lots of good information in there. Chapter 5, it goes through additional methods that towns and local governments can utilize to preserve farmland in addition to this state program, and then also other activities that support agriculture. So things like farmers markets, farmer educations, farmers teaching each other new techniques, things like that. And then chapter 6 is really the most important one in this plan because it goes through the farmland preservation areas. But it also goes through issue identification for agricultural resources and then recommendations for agricultural development, the other statutory requirements. Lastly, chapter 7 is a pretty brief chapter, but it's all the implementation. So how towns, local governments, and landowners would go about implementing this plan. Okay, let's go into how we created these farmland preservation areas. Step 1 was what we call is a LESA analysis, which is a land evaluation and site assessment analysis. It's really easy if I just break it down into two parts. There's the land evaluation component, which looks at all the natural features. It's looking at every single parcel that is farmland within Washington County. And it looks at all the natural features and it kind of scores them. So it scores, you know, this is the type of soil on this property. And therefore it's a 10 because it's, you know, really good for soybean and corn production. And then it'll look at like, you know, wetlands and other natural features. Number two, the other component is the site assessment portion. So that portion is all the man-made features. So it looks at, is this 40-acre farmland right next to a residential development where the farmer or the landowner might be looking at potentially developing in the future? Is there certain development pressures for man-made features that might make it so this property is more likely to be developed in the future? So it even looks at like hamlets and is it close to on and off ramps and things like that. But in the end, it makes a bunch of scores, but then it puts it all into one score, one LISA score. It's a 1 to 10 score on every single parcel, 10 being the highest on what the value is for the farmland to be protected. And then we further broke it up into tier 1 and tier 2 farmland. And we kind of split it at the 6 point, there was an average of 6.8 or 6.7 score on the LISA scores. So anything at that 6.7 or above is tier 1. So that's the land that's best suited for long-term protection. And anything that's tier 2, it still should be considered for long-term protection, but you know, tier 1 is just being higher. Okay. Step 2, we went through a delineation process. So we went through this 5-step process. We took those base parcels and then we screened them with these criteria. So we looked at the minimum block size. Basically, we looked at groups of parcels. If there was a group of like 3 parcels off on their own in an island, we made sure that they were at least 35 acres in size. So sometimes it can be a little confusing. Sometimes people think that every single parcel has to be at least 35 acres in size, and it's not the case. It is just a group of parcels need to hit at least 35 acres in size. Number 2. They cannot be within a city or village boundary or within a planned sewer service area. Number 3 is they cannot be planned for non-agricultural development. So this is where we looked at the future land use map that Devin mentioned. We saw, you know, hey, this parcel is meant for residential, therefore we took it out. Then we went through and looked at all the town. We specifically looked at every single town future land use map or the land use plan, another word for it. And we use that as a screening process. Then we looked through every single town zoning map, and then we screened to make sure if it was in residential, commercial, or anything that wasn't agriculture, we took it out. Lastly, we looked at every single parcel, and if it had to be at least 30% of the land had to be agricultural use to stay in there. So. And this is the draft result. There's a lot of yellow. It's a little hard to see, but this is the map that we went to the advisory committee with, and then further on in step 3, we went to town boards and the village of Germantown to get some input on these maps. So this is just the draft. This is not the final version. So we went through step 3. Because it's really up to the towns to implement this plan or the state farmland preservation program. So we really needed their input on this plan. So we needed to know, you know, are they willing to do the next step of, you know, updating their future land use maps to show these farmland preservation areas, or is there just not enough support for it to proceed? And we left that decision up to them. So we invited every single landowner that was within these farmland preservation areas to these presentations. We got a lot of good turnout. And then presented them, provided a resolution of intent for the town board and the village of Germantown to consider. And then we kind of waited, you know, and let them review the map, see if there was any additions or removals that the town board or the village had. And then we incorporated those additions or removals. And then we presented them like their final draft, and then they considered the resolution. If they approved the resolution, then we would take their draft farmland preservation map, like the town of Addison. We took their farmland preservation map and we put it on the final map, which is here. So anyone that rejected or declined, just, for numerous reasons, there wasn't enough interest, or something like that, we did not include them on this map. So this is the map that will get sent to DATCAP for certification. We had 7 towns pass the resolution. So they're all the ones that are gonna be sent to DATCAP for certification. So if they are interested in implementing the State Farmland Preservation Program, they can go about pursuing the next steps and then allowing either landowners to pursue the actual implementation of the State Farmland Preservation Program, or if they want to go the zoning route. So, which actually was a later slide, but, so in addition to this chapter, there's the policies and programs. This is really in addition to the county comprehensive plan, so it's similarly set up where we have it set up by the department. And then policies and programs within the department. So for example, the natural resource department, we have policies specific to them. And we have programs specific to them. So there's more than just these ones, but they're just examples, so. All right, so now we're gonna move into, the adoption of the plan, and that timeline. So public hearing notice, just got posted on April 15th. This presentation, and then an open house will be held on April 30th. We're going to invite the advisory committees, and I believe we're going to invite the county board to this open house as well. And then we're also going to invite every single landowner that is within the farmland preservation areas. They're getting sent off to the state, so anybody that declines won't get a postcard, but we're going to invite all landowners that would be impacted to this open house to find out more information about this plan. Next, there's gonna be a public hearing on May 15th, next land use and planning committee. And then that's where the resolution and ordinance will be considered. Once we make all revisions to the plan based off the public comment, based off your comments, this plan goes off to DATCAP to get certified. They have 90 days to review this plan. And then they should there's 2 or 3 ways they can go about this. They could have a lot of revisions. They could have some revisions, or they could approve it and certify it as is. So our department will work through those revisions, and then once we have the final version with all the revisions, we'll bring it to the land use and planning committee for a recommendation to the county board. The county board will then go through and consider this plan. So last thing, once the plan is adopted, that is when towns can go about those further steps that I mentioned about implementing the plan. So last slide before the question slide, it gets updated every 10 years or whenever there's an amendment to the plan. So I forgot to mention there were 2 parcels on this map. It is a little hard to see, but those parcels aren't being included right away to the farmland preservation plan. And that is because certain changes need to happen within their future land use or zoning in order for them to conform to our criteria and then therefore the state statute. So once those changes happen, that's where we would potentially see an amendment from the towns, and we can go through and then get it recertified through DATCAP. Questions?
Questions from the committee?
Just a quick one for me. Oh, excuse me, Miles.
I did your meeting at Town Harrison and stuff down there, and I mean, there was parcels was up to a subdivision that they had included, and we
Right.
took them off because we don't intend, we want to keep farming them.
Right, exactly. Those parcels were a great example. Part of those parcels were the future land use was residential. So that change needs to happen before they can be completed, but they can, as soon as the town of Addison makes those changes, we can go through and certify
I think
them.
we changed to that night.
Oh, yeah, so, exactly, so, yeah.
So those blue areas, 1 second. Let's see it. So those blue changes, those will come back before the regular on.
Yeah.
Would that come to this committee, would that go to the,
It would come to the committee,
does that need to go to the court after it's
it would need to go to the board, because technically it would be an amendment to the comprehensive plan too, because they're attached. So that's we're following all the steps that would be. So we come to this committee for recommendation, after a 30-day public hearing, and then it would go to the county board for a final consideration.
Okay. Supervisor Conrad?
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just want to point out, oh, you pulled the slides down, but one of the, a couple of the changes from the previous 10-year plan where none of the municipalities, bought in to this and decided, to offer this to landowners there was a lot more restrictions in the previous plan versus the current one. We had a lot of great discussion with our committee members about those barriers and things. And say one of them too was the minimum acreage. In the past plan, the minimum acreage was 100 acres, and it had to be a landowner adjacent to you that also agreed to participating into the farmland preservation and the practices that are required to be within that. The committee thought, that was, too restrictive, one of the barriers, and thus we dropped it down to 35 acres. And why the 35 acres? Several parcels are blocked off into, say, 40 acres. And then maybe some of that 40 acres is, for, their home or, farming, non-agricultural aspects. But it was great discussion. And also too, due to the, newer best practices in farmland, and how you're able to, really improve the quality of your land quicker than in the past with these newer best practices that are out there for soil and things. We also adjusted, what's that? Not the Lisa, but can you correct me on that, Adam? The quality of the soil, what's that title again?
So there was an adjustment. So originally there was a sixth step in here that stated that only parcels that were had sort of Lisa score of 6.8 or higher were included in the spotlight reservation areas, because last time around, the tier 1, there was so much more tier 1 farmland in the Lisa analysis map that it was a significant chunk. And this time around, there was a change in the land evaluation scores for the soil values. NRCS, the National Conservation Service, they had gone through in between the 10 years that we updated this plan and changed those scores. So this time around, a lot of the analysis came back with a lot more tier 2 farmland. And when we initially approached the committee with it, they said, hey, this isn't, enough farmland, and therefore we're going to recommend these changes. We went back and made those recommendations. We looked at it, and really I think we gained a few, or we only lost like a few, like 100 parcels. It was pretty close after those changes to the previous farmland preservation area map in 2013. So it did add a lot more farmland to the plan. So that's what Supervisor Conrad is alluding to.
Yes, yeah, thank you. In the past, it was that Lisa just tier 1, but we expanded it to include the tier 1 and tier 2. But yeah, we had great input, again, like I said, from all the representatives of the committee on this. And it's truly, up to once, the 7 municipalities who did agree, to offering their farmers, and landowners the option to be, sign up for farmland preservation at the state level. That's 7 versus 0 in the past. But it truly still comes down just to that, individual landowner farmer to participate.
Very good. Any more questions or comments from the committee?
You were on asking on the question about if you rent land and the landowner agrees to it, you can put it in with yours.
Or the tax credit amounts,
Yeah.
so this program is meant for farmers and landowners. So if you rent your land out to a farmer, as long as they're producing enough revenue off of that property, they qualify for the tax credit. Yep.
Yes, I would really like to give Adam credit for the success of this program. He spent a lot of late nights and extra hours too at all the municipality meetings and everything. And to also my co-chair, Mr. Lofi, he did a lot of face-to-face one-on-one with landowners.
Thank you very much. We will move on. We have a natural resources quarterly report. Logan, did I leave you sitting there that whole time? I apologize, sir. I did not realize. Certainly not intentional. I'm like, why is Logan waiting? Well, then I realized. Sorry about that. He's got like a 2-minute presentation, I'm sure.
No worries whatsoever. This, actually, I didn't know I was gonna be presenting tonight, so, yeah. As far as our quarterly report goes, I think, really the main thing to touch on, which I'm pretty sure everybody in here knows, is the staffing changes happening in our natural resources department. I have, resigned my position as the assistant natural resources director. And that's gonna be effective, May 8th. And in the interim, Brett Shearer, who you guys, saw earlier tonight, is going to be covering some of like the project aspects of the parks work that I did, and also carrying forward our water resources initiative, kind of leading that group, in addition to leading our land resources division as well. And then Bo Flitter, who's been with our Parks Department for, I think, just over 20 years. We moved him into a supervisor position, and he's going to be covering operations for our park system. I have personally a lot of confidence in both of them. I've kind of been preparing Bo and his role for our parks operations really over the last years. Last fall, he got promoted to a lead. He's done a phenomenal job with scheduling and coordinating with our business manager. I have a lot of faith in him, obviously a tenured employee, and then, Brett as well. I worked, with Brett on kind of some of his issues and then some mixed issues, once I took over as assistant director, and, have all the confidence in the world in Brett, in his role. And really, it doesn't get, noticed so much here, on this platform, but in our natural resources department, we really have just a great overall team. There's a lot of folks that you guys don't get to interact with that are just really outstanding people. They have a lot of drive. They're very intelligent, and while you may have been familiar with me or Jamie standing up here, we really take a team approach down there. And there's just a lot of really good people. So I have no doubts that you're going to continue to see really good work come out of the Parks Department and Natural Resources Department, even with my departure. There's a lot of really good folks back there, and I kind of just want to take a moment and thank all of you for the last few years. It's been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed working with you all. I know we had some tough situations that we had to work through, and overall, I think, we really did a great job, all of us, working to further our park system and our natural resources department. And there's a lot of big things coming, and I think we're going to do a really good job of that. So.
And on behalf of certainly the committee, thank you for your hard work, your diligence in this department. It's been a real pleasure working with you. I wish we had more time together, but I do wish you good luck in your future endeavors. I know it's a big opportunity for your family, and so that's always a great thing to see somebody who's leads himself with success, have more success thrust upon him. So I think that's just fantastic. It looks like you're growing in a great direction. So thank you again for your time and your efforts and your energies. And, Miss Supervisor Conrad would like to say, I'm sure, a few kind words as well. Thank you, Supervisor.
Oh, goodness, yes, I have to. Truly, you are going to be Miss Logan. You've gained so much, showed respect, gained respect, very diplomatic and professional in all your interactions. And like you said, with some tough things and very passionate things, but you always, remained a very professional. And I truly think the end result always, turned out as it should. But goodness, you will be missed, and I wish the best to you.
Thank you, Supervisor Conrad. I appreciate it. It certainly was a pleasure working with you. You and I went through a few of those items together, and it was definitely great working with you on all.
Thank you.
All right, with that, anybody else? All right. Get the heck out of my,
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, then that will adjourn our meeting. Our next meeting date is May 15th, 2025. We'll see you then.